Hello, everyone, and welcome to Doodles MD, where we simplify medical information into relatable and applicable forms for your daily life. I am Falake Lawal, your host, public health physician, board certified internal medicine and infectious diseases specialist. Today is exciting because we will be starting our Know Your Body series, and first on the list is the cardiovascular system, which is the system of the heart and the blood vessels. So we're going to be talking about the function, the structure, and the process of how the heart and the blood vessels work together to work to be able to do the job and serve our body. So before we go, ahead, the first thing I want us to just keep in mind is what is the overall function of this heart and blood vessel system, which is the cardiovascular system. First of all, the function, the overall single baseline function is to move blood around the body. But why are you moving blood around the body? And there has to be a need. There has to be a reason. And the first is that this moving obviously transports nutrients, gases like oxygen, carbon dioxide, hormones, all sorts of things, medications, fluid, proteins, glucose molecules, sugar molecules, energy molecules around the body, and is able to move waste products from the cells and the organs out to where it needs to go to be excreted, either into the lungs, the liver, the kidneys, and all sorts like that. The next important role is that the cardiovascular system helps to meet the body's demand for activity, exercise, and stress. So you notice that when you are walking up a flight of stairs or you have to run to catch a bus or something like that, your heart beats a little faster because your body needs a little more, either by your muscles, the oxygen, everything, and your heart has to catch up to that to be able to provide the nutrients, the oxygen, what the body needs, and to be able to remove waste products quickly, because we get things like cramps because it's caused by buildup of lactic acid, which is a waste product that needs to be gotten rid of. The third function is that circulating blood around the body actually helps to maintain the body temperature. And so when you're in a hot weather, your blood moves really faster sometimes to be able to circulate either from the colder areas of your body into the warmer areas to be able to balance the temperature. And when you're in a cold environment where your skin is a bit colder, the body also continuously circulates obviously, but that circulation helps to move blood from the inner parts of your body that's warmer to be able to mix it with that around on the more superficial side, so that your body is trying to maintain and keeping those cells on the periphery alive. So next, we're going to move on and talk about the structure of this cardiovascular system, which is the system of pump and pipes. Stay tuned. So now we're going to talk about the structure of the cardiovascular system. Like we said, this is, the cardiac, the vascular, the pump, and the pipes, right? So the pump, talking about the pump, that is the heart. The average adult heart weighs about 8 to 12 ounces, which is about 156 to 422 grams. In the average adult. Keep in mind that in men, the size and the weight of the heart is slightly larger on the average than women. Now, going to the other parts of the structure. Now, the heart has a mechanical structure and it has an electrical structure that helps it to be able to function. The blood vessels also have a mechanical structure, but not so much the electrical structure. Now, talking about the mechanical structure of the heart, it has walls. As you can see, it is, it's kind of like a container, and a container definitely has to have a wall. So this has walls, and that wall has 3 layers. When we open it up, even though it may not give a good picture or a good view, there is this what looks reddish and pinkish here. Usually on the outside there is what is called there's the outside layer, which is the pericardium, and then the middle, and then the inner layer. And also in having the walls, you have the outer walls, and then you have the walls that form divisions on the inside, and the inside divisions now form the chambers. And in the normal heart, there are 4 chambers. If we look at it, this is how the heart sits normally. And when we open it up somewhat, blood comes in through these 2, right? And it comes into this 1 chamber here, and it goes down into this chamber. And from here, this is what connects to that. And from this side goes here. So this goes out through here and comes out here, right? And so this is another chamber. And then when blood is coming back in, it comes in and flipping into the back now. Remember, we said this side, right? So if it's normally sitting like this, this is the back. Blood comes in through here from the lungs, and then comes here and into this chamber. So this is a 3rd chamber, and then it comes down into here, which is the 4th chamber. And each of the chambers has a valve, or has a door on at the end of it. Something comes in from one point, there's a valve that makes sure that what is coming in kind of like waits a little bit before it goes on to the next place, and those are called the valves. Next, there is the electrical system. So the heart kind of has its own electrical, kind of like an internal generator, and this starts with a cluster of cells that are called the sinoatrial node. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but just know that it has an internal electrical conduction system, and this electrical system is a cluster of cells that starts, and it generates electricity somewhere on the inside of the heart, somewhere around here. It starts, it beats, generates that, and then the electricity travels down here, down into here, and it splits to be able to serve all the parts of the heart. Okay, now fun fact is that these cells are actually active from 4 weeks of conception. And so when people they're doing like the ultrasound, the ultrasound would catch like the flicker and the movement. But at this time, when they first develop, the heart is not yet well formed, so you might not see you might not hear a heartbeat, but you will see the flicker because it's causing a movement. And these electrical impulses is actually the first thing that needs to happen, and it causes the muscles to contract, to squeeze, and then each contraction corresponds to actually a tracing on the electrocardiogram. So you would see they would place things on people's chest, and then you would see like a tracing, what looks like the kind of tracing that they get when they perform lie detector tests on people. So each contraction has a corresponding, each chamber. So the upper chamber, when they contract, there's a part that we look at, and we know this place represents the upper chamber, and when something is wrong on that tracing, we know where to look for the problem, and so on and so forth. So remember that the heart needs its own internal generator to be able to function at all. Now remember, we're talking about the pump and the pipes, right? So we've talked about the pump, which is the heart. The blood vessels, which is the pipes, also has walls, but in their own case, it's a pipe. So it's a tubing that's cylindrical, right? But it also has, the layers, the outer layer, the middle layer, and the inner layer that the heart has, and it's a continuous chamber. Now, in the arteries, there are no valves, but in the veins, there are valves, which we would explain a little later. So we have the arteries, we have the veins, and we have the capillaries, which are the tiniest blood vessels, and I would explain more about them in a wee bit. So going on with the structure of the heart and our pumps, we talked about that it has the mechanical structure of it has 3 layers, and the wall has 3 layers, right? So there is an outer layer for protection. It's called the pericardium, and the names are important, not that you necessarily have to remember them, but they use them to correspond with the abnormalities, things like pericarditis and pericardial effusion and things like that. So there's the outer layer, and every organ in the body usually has an outer covering, you know. And so there's the outer layer that's called the pericardium. There is the middle muscular layer, and that's called the myocardium. And then the inside is called the endocardium. And these layers are also similar for blood vessels, which are the pipes. So it continues out, and you see them as pipes and tubes. Now in the chamber, we have the left and the right side. Because of the way the heart sits naturally, it might not quite be left and right, but if I straighten it up this way, this is the right side, this is the left side, even though the heart normally naturally sits a little slanted. And in the even though there's a right and the left, there's also the upper somewhat and the lower chambers. I tend to call the upper chambers like the receivers, because this is where when blood comes in, the blood gets into here, and then it goes down into here, into the ventricles, which I call the ejectors, because the work of this part, the lower part, is to push blood out of the heart. And then we have the valves. The valves also, you have the those on the right side and those on the left side. So we have the atrioventricular valves, and these are the ones sitting in between the atrium, which are the receivers, and the ventricles, which is the ejector. And you have one on both sides. So you have the right atrioventricular valve and you have the left atrioventricular valve. And like I said, it's always at the end of the chamber above or the chamber before. So the atrium has the valve at the end of it. Next is the semilunar valve. If you look into here, there's this white thing. Technically, there's a white thing. It's called the semilunar valve, and the semilunar comes from the shapes of the valves. And at the end, on the outlet of the ventricles, you can see this one is for this side, and this one is for this side. So this one goes into this big red tube, and this one goes into this big blue tube. So the semilunar valves is the valve that is before the blood leaves the heart, leaves the ejection chamber of the heart into the aortic and the pulmonic valve, into the aorta and the pulmonary vein. And so they're called the aortic and the pulmonary valves. Now, fun fact is that we tend to think that the heartbeat is caused by the muscle contraction. Technically, no. The heartbeats are actually caused by the closing of the valves. That's a fun fact. So closing, the first heart sound is caused by the closing of the atrioventricular valve, which is the one between the chambers. And then the second heart sound is caused by the closing of the semilunar valve before the blood leaves the ejection chamber. So next, I'm going to talk about the process of how all these parts work together. Stay tuned.